This is Untitled Atari 8-bit podcast.
So I decided that instead of trying to sell the program, I want to be paid for every single floppy disk drive that a manufacturer makes. It was designed for sort of a moment in time, and the goal was not to keep evolving it as new hardware became available. It was to fulfill the need at that time.
I'm Kevin Savitz, and this is an interview episode of Antic, the Atari 8-bit podcast. Ron Bieber was involved with the creation and marketing of SmartDOS, an alternative DOS that was bundled with disk drives from Rana and Astra, and also sold by Sears stores. SmartDOS was the first disk operating system to be density smart, that is, automatically changing between the disk drive's density modes depending on the disk used. This interview took place March 4, 2015.
Can you tell me how you got started with Atari Computers?
Oh, yes. Atari 2600, that's where I started. I got very much interested in playing with that stuff, with all the games, and I even collected all the cartridges. And matter of fact, I even have it, the old machine, in the basement somewhere in a cabinet. One day, I went to the store, and I see Star Raiders. And when I saw Star Raiders, I decided, you know what, I need one of those computers. So that's when I got an Atari 800 shortly after then.
Nice. And what did you start doing with it besides playing Star Raiders?
Well, I wanted to do everything with that computer. I was very much enamored by it. And I even joined some users groups so I could learn new things and learn all the possibilities that existed, and made a couple of friends. And I even started my own sort of private users group with about 6 different people. And in that group, we used to enjoy trying out all the new software, and the various people in the group were able to get their hands on different software through various means, and we would try them all out and enjoy them, and the stuff that we really liked we would each buy.
Awesome. And where was this? You were in California somewhere at the time, or?
Yeah, Southern California. Started in Beverly Hills, California.
Okay. So you guys, that's kind of interesting. You guys got together, tried out software, and then bought it, as opposed to a whole lot of other people who tried out software and then copied it.
Yes. We knew what was right and what was wrong.
Cool. All right. So somehow it seems you learned assembly language on the way to creating SmartDOS. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Well,
actually, in my little group, I had various people who did various things. One guy actually worked on the movie Tron doing the voice synthesis, and another guy was wrote a lot of books for Atari and other computers, and also did some freelance reviews. And another guy was an airplane navigator for one of the major airlines, and we all contributed in different ways, and that particular guy, whose name is John, volunteered one day to write a program for the group. If the group wanted something, that was his contribution. He was going to write something for us. And so it started out being tools to do this, and it sort of grew from there. And I sort of was more of the UI guy and the marketing guy, and also came up with some of the concepts for how it should work, what it should do, and things like that. So I didn't actually do much of the programming itself. My role was sort of everything else.
Okay. Cool. That was John Chenoweth, correct?
That's correct.
Cool. So you guys were putting together various sorts of utilities and just little programs and things that were useful to you. It didn't start off as, we're going to create a DOS, it sounds like.
That's true, although it started out being just tools, yes, and some of those tools are still in SmartDOS or were in SmartDOS. Mm-hmm. And yes, it grew around it, and especially it sort of all crystallized because of the floppy disk drive. Mm-hmm. That various companies came out with double density floppy disk drives, I should say. Mm-hmm. And it was because of that there really was a need for it. It used to be, I don't know if you remember this, but it used to be that if you wanted to boot up a floppy drive in single density, you had to boot with a single density formatted disk with a single density formatted DOS on it. Mm-hmm. And if you wanted to switch over to a double density disk, you had to reboot with a double density floppy disk that had a double density formatted DOS on it.
Okay, I don't think I knew that. I've spent my whole Atari life in single density mode, including now. So I guess I have missed that bit of knowledge. Okay, go ahead.
And so that was driving me nuts. And and at one point I decided that I wanted to also use a computer at work in the family's lighting business, and that particular problem was really bothering me. And so at that point I said, hey, John, can't we do something to make this so it can automatically switch densities? And basically I was told no. And then I decided that there's got to be a way to do it. And I said, if it reads a bad disk, it errors out. So why can't you, when you get the first error or the second error, try to switch to the opposite density and see if you could read in that density? Mm-hmm. So John, who's an amazing guy, he was really intelligent, said, let me check it out. And he indeed came up with a part of the program that allowed it to do that. And then there was the concern, though, that if there is a disk that's hard to read, it could possibly error out and not read the disk at all and keep trying to switch. And all. So we actually put in the ability to change the quantity of times that the disk attempts to read before changing.
Okay.
And originally, actually, we were going to call the operating system Density Smart DOS. And we realized, though, that it was much more than just the ability to change densities, and that's why we changed it to Smart DOS.
Because you had other features like the disk speed test and other gadgets like that?
That's correct.
Are you still in touch with John?
No, I haven't talked to John in a long time.
Who was the, you mentioned one of your friends in the group wrote Atari books. Do you remember his name?
Jeff Stanton.
Okay. Cool. I think I emailed with him years ago. I should find him and interview him too. All right, so you've created this DOS. What came next? I mean, eventually, I know you sold it to, or licensed it to Rana and Astra. At what point did you go, okay, let's try to offer this out to the public rather than just a tool for our little group?
Well, we worked on it so long, and it was such a great tool that I thought that I got to market this thing. Mm-hmm. But the problem with DOS is you can't really copy protect it, And by its very nature, it has to be able to be easily duplicated, and it will be on most every single diskette there is, just by the way the system operates.
Traditionally, there's a function for it to copy itself.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So I decided that instead of trying to sell the program, I want to be paid for every single floppy disk drive that a manufacturer makes.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had a friend who did word processing for a major law firm in downtown Los Angeles, and he graciously gave me a copy of a contract, a royalty contract, a nice thick contract that was just perfect for the application, of course, but it needed some tweaking. And so I spent a long time going through that contract, tweaking it just right. And meanwhile, I sent some letters to the various disk drive manufacturers, Rana and Astra, and there was another one, Indus, or something like Indus at the time.
Yeah, Indus, right.
Okay. And I never heard back from Indus, but both Rana and Astra contacted me and were very interested right from the start. So I went to each of them and with John, and we demoed the system for each of them, and they loved it. And so we worked out a deal, just as I described, where every disk drive, floppy disk drive that they sold, they'd pay us a royalty. And so I didn't have to worry about keeping track of something that cannot be kept track of really as like software and versus hardware. So that worked out well.
Do you remember what the per disk royalty was for you guys?
I don't really. No, I was thinking about that the other day, and I just don't remember the number.
Okay. I mean, give me we're talking a dollar or $10 per. I mean, I just kind of get a rough.
I think it was between $5 and $10, somewhere around there.
Okay.
And then later on, actually, I was surprised. I got a call from Sears department stores, and they wanted to order a bunch of them. So even though I originally was not going to sell it as a standalone product, at that point I decided, what the heck. So I sold them a couple different orders of SmartDOS along the way.
Interesting. That's cool. And then something about the Programmer's Workshop, you also sold through them?
Yes, the Programmer's Workshop actually was affiliated with Astra Systems.
Oh, okay. I'm not very familiar with them.
They were the company that also made a floppy disk drive.
So did you guys stick with updating SmartDOS? I mean, I know now it's up to 8.2D. Was that you guys the whole time, or did it eventually change hands?
Oh no, that's where we stopped. It was designed for sort of a moment in time, and the goal was not to keep evolving it as new hardware became available. It was to fulfill the need at that time. Matter of fact, Atari actually came out with actually wasn't double density, but it was a floppy disk drive of their own, a new one that had additional storage per each diskette. But instead of
their enhanced density drive,
exactly, which was actually density plus 1/3 instead of double density, and we had the choice of supporting it or not, and we decided we're not even going to support that because it seemed like a stupid idea to us.
And everybody else.
Yes.
So you created the software for a moment in time, but the software eventually did evolve. So did you sell it to someone else eventually to maintain it later?
No, all the evolutions of SmartDOS we did ourselves. Now, actually, stepping backwards instead of forward in the timeline, originally SmartDOS was an executable file that was sort of like a super pill, that it modified Atari DOS and turned it into SmartDOS on the fly. later on, we were able to license Atari DOS and do that all ahead of time and just provide the finished working disk operating system complete.
Oh, that's interesting. So the actual, I'm assuming the actual boot part of it, the DOS loader stuff, was probably more or less Atari's, just directly lifted from Atari, and then the menu system was yours. Something like that?
Yes, the foundation was Atari, but we went in and changed not only some of the foundation, but also a lot of the first and second stories, so to speak.
Nice. So what's the current status of SmartDOS? I mean, what at some point you guys walked away and said, we're done? Is it... Was that I don't know, was that a decision or just kind of like we're bored, we're on to other things and new computers by now? Or
well, you know that some of the creators of the Atari computer went on to produce the Amiga computer for Commodore. Did you know that? And
yes.
We transitioned also to the Amiga. And it wasn't that I wasn't willing to keep selling what we had done, but that was sort of the end of what we set out to do, and we did it, and then we moved on.
All right. Did you work on any other projects other than SmartDOS? Products or projects? Or?
Not really, no. I sort of jumped from hobby to hobby cyclically, but I once got involved a little bit with some random dot stereogram licensing and marketing, but I never really was able to put the time into it. So I can't say that I have done really anything along those lines with computers.
So all in all, was the SmartDOS project profitable for you guys? Was it worthwhile?
Oh, sure. It was a hobby for us, and so anything that worked out well with it was great. With the one caveat that I'll mention, or the one exception, I should say, and that is that actually John started to work for Rana Systems. He was offered a job there. And he did a lot of programming of their floppy drive, and it got much better when he was working there.
You don't still have an Atari computer, do you?
Actually, I do, but I haven't used it in a very long time.
If you could send a message to the Atari computing community that still exists, and you can right now, what would you tell them?
That I'm actually really surprised that you exist.
Fair enough.
I don't mean any offense by it. I loved my Atari computer. But there's some new possibilities that are just tremendous that I'm a future kind of a guy. I like to look forward to new things and growth and such. And
all right. So what are you working on today? Either as work or as application? What's interesting to you now?
Well, I completed my 82nd project for SpaceX just yesterday. I do photometric analysis for various sites, including I did a lighting design for the Four Seasons Hotel at Epcot Center, their main entrance grand stairway. I just designed a giant mall project for the Mall of Orange. I've done lighting designs for LAX, not only for the exterior but for Terminal 3, Hollywood Bowl. But I don't know if these are interesting to you because it's not computer stuff, although I do use, for photometry, I do use ray tracing and stuff in order to model the performance of lighting fixtures.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
If you enjoyed these interviews and would like to contribute something, I encourage you instead to donate to one of our favorite organizations, the Internet Archive, at archive.org. The Internet Archive is a nonprofit digital library with the stated mission of universal access to all knowledge. They've done incredible things to preserve computer history, including hosting thousands of programs in an in-browser Atari emulator, creating the Wayback Machine, and offering full-page scans of countless Atari computer books and magazines. Make your tax-deductible contribution at archive.org/donate.